often when you come to Bitcoin, it requires learning so much more about the world. Like you're learning about energy, cryptography, human rights, central banking, like everything. And so there's a lot of hurdles up front.
Welcome to the Zoom Out podcast. My name is Tim Niemeyer. Today, I'm joined by Ella Hough. Ella, thank you for joining me on Zoom Out. It's an honor. For those who don't know Ella is a junior at Cornell University. She has started a lot. The Cornell Bitcoin Club, Bitcoin Students Network, Generation Bitcoin, part of all those. And also, she has just recently created her own Bitcoin degree at Cornell. And I wanted to jump into all of that as much as we can. So, Ella, let me start out. Many might not know your backstory. Your mother, Lisa Hough, is, I want to say, VP of Strategic Relations at Custodia Bank.
Yes, that sounds right.
Which is a Bitcoin bank, just to be, general speaking.
Yeah.
So I always like to start out with talking about people's backstory, like how they got into Bitcoin. I'm guessing your mother, from what I've read from your posts and everything, you guys have a great connection. I'm guessing she had quite an influence on your Bitcoin journey.
Yes, I mean, certainly, I will say it was almost a bit of a happy coincidence. We kind of found Bitcoin, or we had our own learning journeys in different areas, and then like kind of had a partner to go down the rabbit hole with. But I will say
That's
she
great.
definitely went down the rabbit hole before me. But I actually so I kind of say I maybe first learned about Bitcoin and then I discovered Bitcoin. Because, and I think we'll talk about this later, but
Sure.
Bitcoin is much more than just a money to me, or it can be thought of in different ways. But I was a senior in high school, and I was in this technology certificate program called Technology, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. And to earn the certificate, you had to take a variety of classes. One of those was called blockchain. That was it. And so we learned about Bitcoin first, as most people do, and then but it was only presented as a distributed ledger technology. Bitcoin was the first, and then there's others. So I classify that as my first learning about Bitcoin. But then it was, yeah, exactly, first touch point. And so at the time, my mom, I think she had read like an MIT tech review, and they were talking about blockchain technology. And then we both started watching the MIT Open Courseware Gary Gensler course, like Blockchain and Money. And then she was listening to a ton of other podcasts and books. And then we both went to the Oslo Freedom Forum, and this was June 2022, I believe. And that is the point where I say I really discovered, appreciated Bitcoin, what it is, what it does for the world. And so, yeah, I segmented into two different areas, but we had our own kind of separate journeys. And then certainly, we talk about it all the time. So she definitely had an influence.
That's great. And I remember you writing about or speaking about, I assume it's pre-Bitcoin, you were studying the intersection of tech and ethics. Can you kind of describe? Yeah. That's an interesting space to be in.
Yes, I might make it a little bit even more interesting by adding in that I was also studying Mandarin or Chinese, and that was kind of like the missing. That's how it kind of linked them, oddly enough. But so I did my junior year of high school. Okay, so sorry, it was senior year. I was taking that blockchain course. Sure. Junior year of high school in Beijing. I had never been to China. I had never taken a single class in Mandarin, and I wanted to do this study abroad program. And so I got there, literally knew nothing, but had the most incredible teachers. And so one day, the teacher wrote a character up on the whiteboard, and it was the character for filial piety. Basically, the relationship between parent and child, and how when you are a young child, your parent will take care of you. But when you grow up and your parent gets older, you will support your parents. And so this character, I'll keep it abbreviated, it basically visually shows how you should act that relationship. And so I sat there And at the time, I was taking like an AI online course, just it was like intro to AI. I thought, here's this language that kind of codes, to use that word,
Sure.
ethics or how you should act into its language. Can we do the same thing with a computer language?
Huh.
Is there a way you can code ethics into a language? At the time, I had never taken a CS course. I was just learning about AI and how the idea of the singularity, if it's true or not, but basically the idea that by I think it's like 2044, would all kind of machines become smarter than humans? And so, how do we put a seatbelt kind of on these AI machines that they make good decisions? But then good is, everyone has a different definition of what is
Subjective,
good
right?
or what is moral. Yeah. Um, and so that is really what I was thinking about working on. I was working at IBM later, starting my senior year up until my freshman year of college. So it was about like 18 months, I think. And so just around the whole AI narrative there, I was doing education related stuff, not AI. But that's what I was like, okay, after college, like I'm going to do AI and ethics with some Chinese influence.
So you already had this kind of seed of Bitcoin being a blockchain, but you've heard about it planted, and
Hmm.
then you're doing all this other stuff, not realizing yet that, not yet having that epiphany that Bitcoin does all of this stuff that you're saying. So
Yeah.
without jumping too far ahead, like this is so fascinating.
So I have a Medium if anyone's interested, and I wrote
Yeah,
a kind of far flung um essay inspired by a talk that I had heard by Drew Van Saul. Probably said his name wrong. But it was basically like, is Bitcoin the metabolic currency of AI systems and the influence of language and whatnot? But I think to just like abstract what was going on, or hindsight's 2020, it was just, what's the biggest problem I can see in the world, and how can I work on that? And so where I was right then, I was like, oh, like AI, like everyone's talking about it, this could be really bad. um, and then I took a class on creativity at the end of my freshman year of college. So this is now, for the timeline, about a year looking at Bitcoin, maybe a little longer, a little shorter. Um, and then, so I took this class on creativity. And then it was like a month later when that class finished, I was in Oslo for the Human Rights Foundation's conference, the Oslo Freedom Forum. On the plane ride home from that is when I wrote this kind of like crazy article about numbers in Bitcoin, and got home and read the US budget, and my mind was kind of blown. And from that point on, I was like, no, Bitcoin is what I need to put my time and energy into. And then I transferred to Cornell, and that's when the whole Bitcoin major journey began.
so I just got to say, first of all, thank you for refilling my hope in the youth, because I remember back to my college days of playing in bands, working landscaping, just trying to get by, and I was like barely making it through classes. And and everything that you've accomplished so far, wow. Okay, so for those of you who might not picked up on that, we got so money touches everything, right?
Mhm,
Money touches literally everything. And I've said before, I've come to the conclusion that money isn't money anymore. Luke Broyles calls it political currency units, right?
mhm,
It is a system of control. Many countries are now starting to add social credit scores. So, in a way, they're codifying how they think society should act.
mhm.
And so, when you see Bitcoin, I mean, let's just say I'm going to play dumb here.
Yeah.
Hey, fiat, whatever, they're putting controls on there to make society better. Why should I choose Bitcoin's version of codified ethics versus this other one? What would be a very kind of like just general start to that conversation?
Yeah. Well, so um, I guess I'll just when I so I the Cornell Club, I'm kind of talking about, what is money, what is currency, what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain, what is uppercase V Bitcoin, lowercase v
Mm.
Bitcoin. Not everyone differentiates between them. It's been a helpful tool for me. But I think analogies are really helpful. And so and often when you come to Bitcoin, it requires learning so much more about the world. Like you're learning about energy, cryptography, human rights, central banking, like everything. And so there's a lot of hurdles up front. But think like when you're little, or I think a lot of people, you have a piggy bank and you put your allowance in the piggy bank and you are essentially, custodying your wealth. You have it, you control it, you can count it, verify it, make sure it's there. And then when you're like, for me, I think I was like maybe 13 and I was like, oh, like I'm old enough now. I can go open like a savings account or something like at the bank. And it was like, I was so excited about giving my money away, my property. And so when you think about Bitcoin, it's like, no, this is the first, property that you can own no matter where you are in the world, that no one can take from you if you have it, in cold storage. And so, for me, like you can't have that like with dollars in your bank account. Those are all just an IOU of they owe you that. But if there's no internet, something happens, someone just decides that you've done something wrong, it can all be taken from you. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question, but your fiat currency is not property like Bitcoin is.
Well, that does speak to one big point in this freedom versus safety aspect
Mm-hmm.
of society, where many people, when they get more safety, they don't realize that they're giving up freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the opposite is true too. More freedom requires more self sovereignty, self
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. So there is that aspect of it too. The other thing that I like to point out is that when you say we're making society better, you alluded to it earlier. Whose version of better,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you allow an authority to do so, the other problem with that is that when the political class changes, so do those rules. So
Mm-hmm.
we're always kind of like, the balls. I can't remember the name of the balls where you bounce one and knocks it back and forth, and uh,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I'm
I
talking about.
know. Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of like that with the rules of money. It's like, okay, you might like who's in office now, and you might like the changes they're making, but when it goes back to the other way, because inevitably it will, you're also giving that power to the other side, and they amass more power, and that ball swings harder, and so
Yeah. So I
that's the
have
other
to
aspect.
recommend a book that your listeners might like. It's the Resistance Money book. I don't know if you would have seen that
Is that
circulating on Twitter.
Bradley Rettler?
Yeah, so it's Andrew Bailey, Bradley Rettler, and
Andrew
Craig
Bailey.
Wormacke, three philosophers. And the book isn't, you have to pre order it right now, but I was able to read it, and it does just an incredible job of going through maybe like 25 plus common objections that people have to Bitcoin and trying to answer it in a very just factual, philosophical view. But the question, one of the central questions is, let's say you stepped outside of the world and then you're looking at the world through a veil. You don't know who you are when you enter the world again. You don't know who you'd be. Would you want Bitcoin to be in that world or not? And so it goes through the whole thing. And like the very first line of the book is Bitcoin is for criminals. I think it's the first line. And then it kind of, backs down, but it's, well, not all rules are good. Not all criminals are bad. Like it just really depends on who controls the power. And I think today, as you were mentioning, if you control money, you control the power. For instance, like a lot of times people are disincentivized from saving, or they're told you shouldn't save, go spend in our system for today. And so if you don't have savings, you're more susceptible from someone telling you to do something unethical or that you wouldn't want to do. Bitcoin, by providing you, this unconfiscatable property savings mechanism that actually preserves its value, no, your agency is restored to what do I want to think? What do I want to do? How do I want to act? What do I want to believe in? Um, and so I think
Legal
that's, yeah.
legal
Oh,
doesn't mean moral, right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and
Yeah. Yeah.
and I agree. Bitcoin gives you allows you to express your moral code.
Mhm.
I love that. So let's
Yeah.
pivot a little bit. You're
Yeah.
now into college here.
Hmm.
You've now kind of started to see how Bitcoin is kind of that different version of the codification of ethics, let's just say. Um, you have like a number of things happen. I got to go over this list again. You have Cornell Bitcoin Club, Bitcoin Students Network, and then
Hmm.
creating your Bitcoin degree. Can you kind of chronologically
Yes.
go through that? Hey y'all, are you need a Bitcoin? You looking for a way to safely and securely store your Bitcoin? Check out the Bitcoin Advisors. These Bitcoiners are professionals that will provide you peace of mind so you can sleep soundly at night knowing your Bitcoin is safe. Remember to tell them Zoom Out sent you.
Yes, yes. So the first one I'll mention is Generation Bitcoin. So
Yes.
Generation Bitcoin is a nonprofit, and essentially two main goals: provide education and jobs to those that fall under Generation Bitcoin. So I kind of have like a tag quote. It's like Gen Z is kind of the end of the alphabet and beginning of the future. So like who is going to be this Generation Bitcoin? It's a pretty wide target audience. And so, oh, actually, I should mention, if you are a student and you're listening to this, we partnered with Bitcoin Magazine to provide free student tickets to the Bitcoin conference
Nice.
this July in Nashville, or this Nashville in July. And so please, reach out. It's on our website, Twitter, Gen Bitcoiners. You can find it there or reach out to me.
And I'll put all that in
Um,
the show notes for sure.
Perfect. And then under Generation Bitcoin in March, we launched the Bitcoin Students Network. And so this network is we kind of shrunk the target audience a little bit to focus on college students, so kind of the 18 to 22-year-old range. Now, you don't necessarily have to be in college to be considered a student. Since we've released it, we've had some outreach from high school or kind of grad students. So if you fall into one of those categories too, we would love to talk to you as well. But primarily college age students, and how can we help them start or grow a Bitcoin club at their university? Because community, or layer zero, as maybe I don't think I can really claim this phrase, but I don't know who to attribute it to, but kind of the social human layer of Bitcoin. So you have like layer one, like the
Sounds
code.
Nick Bhatia-ish, but
Yeah, so yeah,
it's
I
good
know,
cover.
because you get all the layers.
Yeah.
But so like layer zero, we
Yeah.
want to just make it visible, the different people that you might not know about that are also interested in Bitcoin. Because I'll get to this, but I was the only Bitcoiner in the Cornell Blockchain Club. And I really thought, like, I guess, like, I'm the only Bitcoiner on this campus. There has to be others. I mean, there's
Right.
thousands of people here, but I couldn't find them. And then I started the Cornell Bitcoin Club, and I discovered like someone from El Salvador who's been a Bitcoiner for years and has written a paper on Bitcoin in the past. So, how do you start and grow a university club? We provide logistical resources to do so, educational, kind of like a repository of workshops, resources. So that if you want to start a club, like, we don't all need to recreate the wheel, for lack of a
Hmm.
better phrase, of how to do so, and then, actual materials to do it. And then financial. Not all universities have funding for clubs, or kind of to facilitate gatherings, or, go to conferences, kind of like the Gen B partnership. And then jobs. It's really hard for, college age students, I know from experience, to, you only have so much time. And are you going to spend time learning about Bitcoin, which everyone in mainstream media tells you is not worth your time? It's bad. There's nothing good. Or are you going to spend time on something else where, everyone else in the university is doing it? This is where there's built-in alumni networks, job pipelines. And so with the Bitcoin Students Network, we're working really hard to create relationships with all the different Bitcoin companies to work on job pipelines, and how can we get more students involved working in the space. So education and jobs. And then to tie it back down, the Cornell Bitcoin Club is kind of one of the guinea pigs of how this is actually going to work.
It
Right
sounds
now,
like
yeah,
a
go ahead.
collegiate level meetup is what I'm.
Yeah. Yes. But then I think also along on the horizon is also like projects. So not just a meetup where you get around and talk, although that
Sure,
is what we have largely done this semester
sure.
because it's the first semester. But we'd like to have different projects and collaborations and really skill development. So yes, kind of like a meetup, but then hopefully we can do a little bit more.
That's my background knowledge. I
Yeah. Yeah.
co-host Bitcoin here in Springfield, Illinois.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I love the organizational the organization that you bring to that because
Yeah.
you're making it easier. I mean, I remember when I
Hmm.
was talking to meetups years ago, and we're like, "How do you do this? What do I do with my
Yeah.
hands? You know, that kind of stuff."
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have that kind of set up for everybody, it makes it so much easier to just hit the ground running. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so that's the goal. We just launched in March, so not everything's out there on the website yet, but that's what we're working on making. And right now we have, say, about 14 countries represented of students across those countries in our network. So yes, that's very, very exciting. And then we have an incredible board of advisors. So we have 12 different board members. We have two general advisors. So Jeff Booth and Michael Riani are our kind of main advisors. And then we have 5 different sub teams. And so it's everything from kind of like career development to club development, Bitcoin community relationship, operations. So we try to be very organized.
I, I,
um,
I could tell just
yeah.
by the explanation that you are. And
Yes.
speaking of organization, um, most people when they go through college don't have I'll just say the
Yeah.
initiative that you have or the vision. So we're into you're already your sophomore year, I want to say,
Hmm.
junior year almost, and you're taking all these courses. You have um, not only the technology and ethics, but what else did you? What were your focuses up leading up
Yeah.
to
So my freshman year of college, I was doing computer science and Chinese.
in
And then
Chinese?
sophomore year, I didn't get into Cornell the first time around. They were like, you can come as a sophomore. You can't come as a freshman. You come as a sophomore, and I had to reapply anyways. So I was going to do computer science and Chinese as well there. And then that summer, they started a cognitive science major. And so I
Mm,
had mentioned this creativity class. And a big portion of that was, how do we ask better questions? At this time, I was kind of learning about Bitcoin, being first exposed to really how the world works. And I could just tell that, okay, our world is going to change a lot over the next years, after graduation. How can I just know how to ask the best questions or think differently? And that's, I think, why the Bitcoin think for yourself resonated with me. And so I just felt computer science was very answer oriented. And I could be wrong because I'm not a CS major, but cognitive science was more question. How do people think, interpret information, make decisions? And so that's the courses I was taking. I was doing all cognitive science. But I really appreciate that Cornell is any person, any study is their motto, and they had an independent major option. And so I said, you know what, I'll come in pursuing cognitive science, but simultaneously was working on a Bitcoin major through the independent major program.
well, and I don't know. I had this thought. So I'm hearing like uh, what's the word? Divergent versus convergent kind of
Yeah.
thinking. The convergent is kind of bringing it all together. And
Yeah.
in my head, I'm sitting here saying, convergent, it's so fiat. I mean, because the divergent thinking, that's where you get
Yeah.
the decentralization allows for further expression, greater expression,
Hmm.
different types of expression. So I can see
Yeah.
how that lines up neatly. So,
Mhm.
okay, so I'm sitting here looking at this list.
Yes.
You shared on your, and I'll share the links. In your
Yeah. Yeah.
links, you have a link to all your uh, Google Drive Bitcoin
Yes.
major at Cornell. Not only did you decide to make your own college course, a Bitcoin degree, that is, you went ahead and documented it all. And kind of like you
Yeah.
did with, I believe you said your Cornell Bitcoin Club,
Yeah.
uh, you kind of open source that. you get,
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I
I
love that.
think Yeah,
Go ahead.
so thank you for mentioning that. So, yes, open source is one of the main values of the Bitcoin Students Network, just in Bitcoin generally. And so I've really tried everything I do, open source it, because again, I just
You
tried it.
could
If
have
other people want to do it, yeah,
packaged it for, 250 bucks, kind of thing, but
yeah,
no, I dig it. Go
yeah.
for it. Tell us
So
about this.
yeah, so let's see, it was like I think it was like September, October. I'm working on this independent major proposal, and let's just it so for where this story is going, the whole
Yeah.
process took about 15 months.
Whew.
It was just approved in January under a different program called the College Scholar Program. And I should preface that it's a study. My degree is College Scholar. What is College Scholar? It's a kind of an independent major program, but I get to choose the title on my transcript, which will be Bitcoin, and then I'll write a thesis all of next year, which I can share a little bit about.
Yeah.
But essentially, I had a couple meetings with the person who runs the independent major program, and I was like, hey, like I really want to study Bitcoin. And the first, I'll tell you some of the reactions. One was, why do you want to study something that's 14 years old? We think you
Really.
could really benefit from staying within an established curriculum. Why don't you study the gold standard? And blockchain is the true innovation, not
Oh no.
Bitcoin. But I actually, I'm glad for all of the pushback, because I became much more knowledgeable. It was really beneficial for me in the long run. And I
Garbage
also think
reward.
where I am now versus then, when I first heard the comment, why don't you study the gold standard? I I should have taken that in a different way than I think I did. I probably would have recognized, like, oh, thank you for recognizing like this concept of sound money, and not the world we're in today. Like, there's just different framing that I could have done a better job of explaining and talking about. But anyways, I could not get a professor to kind of serve as my advisor, because even though this is an independent major that only I study and propose, for some reason there has to be a professor that is attached to it, so that it lives
Oversees it.
on
Right.
after, well, no, so that it lives on after you're gone, was
Oh,
part
okay.
of the component. And yes, overseas, but like, anyways,
Right.
um so I hadn't given up. I was still working on it. And then very sadly, the man that runs the program, he was beloved, he passed away. And so I had a new academic advisor assigned to me, and she had done this program called the College Scholar Program. And I had not heard of it before, still in the college I'm in, of arts and sciences. And basically, it's kind of similar. You don't have any class requirements. You are in different cohorts, and you kind of write up a proposal of what you want to study, what classes would go under it, why you want to study it. And then you put a board together and you write an honors thesis, a 2 semesters honors thesis. And so I was, very fortunate to still be able to apply and accepted. And so now I am studying in the College Scholar Program. Just how it worked out, I still have like my major in cognitive science, and I think a few minors. But
And you're
yes,
still
that is what
doing
I'm up to
Chinese, I
now.
see. I'm looking at the list.
No,
Oh,
no,
or was that
I'm
earlier?
not.
Oh, that's spring
That's
22.
might be earlier.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Um,
So we're going
I
into
wish.
philosophy, market design, uh,
Yeah. So
language and
like,
power. I mean, I want to go back to college to take these courses. These seem interesting compared to what I was
yeah.
taking.
And so, that's the thing. Like, there's not a Bitcoin course here at Cornell, but I was already sitting in my classes just taking notes in the margins on how something would relate to Bitcoin. And now I can just, Jeff Booth frames this so well, put my time and energy into the future that I want to see.
I love
And
that.
so I think I have a lot of peace and just gratitude with the ability to do that now. So yeah, none of my classes are like Bitcoin classes, but everything can kind of
Well,
be thought about of Bitcoin in it.
I see an introduction to blockchain, and that's like about the
So
closest I
this,
can see.
yeah, so that was I was in the Cornell Blockchain Club for
Right.
about a
And
year and
that's
a
what you're
half,
talking about.
because when I got to school, my sophomore year, I transferred. I wanted to start a Bitcoin club. I still have like the Google Drive with the first draft. I just didn't know enough people simply. And they said, if there's already a somewhat established club or an established club that's somewhat similar, just join them. And so I
Well,
joined the block. Yeah, go ahead.
well, there, Twitter, right? No, I'm joking. No, I say that tongue in
Yeah.
cheek, but then I'm also looking through your writings, and I love
Yeah.
how you also you mentioned Jeff Booth, Safety, Matt
Hmm.
Odell. Like you put, I mean, there are some names in there, and
Yeah.
that's the club, right? That's the club that you want to learn from. I'm sorry, I kind of got off
Yeah.
track there. What?
No worries. And so anyways, so I joined the club and I was just the only Bitcoiner in the club. And so that intro to blockchain class that you see on that, I was a TA for and basically just did all of the Bitcoin lessons in it.
Nice.
Uh, yeah.
You have one more year after you wrap up
One more
this
year.
year.
Yeah.
We were mentioning before that you also took on a summer role.
Yes. Yes.
Do you mind sharing that with us?
Absolutely. No, I'm very excited. I'll be at Galaxy Digital this summer in New York City, and I found Bitcoin when I was sophomore, and I had this whole like I had my whole like kind of life like goal point goal like check marks out
Hmm.
there to like my furthest career. I'm like 50, and I would work backwards, and then I found Bitcoin, and I kind of was like, okay, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but it has to be working on Bitcoin. And so, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work with them, but even more so because I'll be doing a rotational internship. So I'll be in asset management, mining, and then firm right research as well. So I kind of get to taste a little bit, see a lot of different sides as well to that.
That's amazing. I know
Yeah.
we have a hard stop here in a few minutes, so I want to respect your time. I want to
No
kind of
worries.
wrap up. Earlier, we mentioned
Yeah.
Bitcoin capital B versus
Hmm.
Bitcoin lowercase b. For those that don't know, Bitcoin capital B represents the network.
Hmm.
It represents basically everything other than Bitcoin lowercase b, the asset.
Hmm.
And you make a point of like wanting to focus on that. So let's fast forward in your mind. You graduate Cornell with your
Hmm.
Bitcoin degree. What do you see for yourself moving forward? Like if you could, ideal world, where do you want to put your time and energy to build the world that you want to see?
Hmm. And I'm sorry, this is still a terrible answer because I haven't exactly figured out what I'm going to
You got
do
plenty of time.
in the space. But how about I share a little bit of the idea of the thesis right now?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
So essentially, so I wrote this article about numbers in Bitcoin, and I noticed a lot of similarities of 0, 1, 2, and 6 reoccurrences. And so if you look at 21 million, it's 2 1 and 6 zeros. Maybe your listeners are familiar with Executive Order 6102,
Gee.
the difficulty adjustment in Bitcoin every 2016 blocks. And then where we are today, we're in the 21st century. And so this is why my Twitter handle is what it is. But I believe
Oh,
the 21 million Bitcoin are tools for the 21st century. And so, what my thesis, at least at the moment, and it's bound to change because I haven't actually written it yet, looking at like basically proving that or arguing for that through the lenses of energy, economics, and linguistics. And so this kind of ties to that far flung article that I mentioned earlier that I wrote. But I believe the 21 million Bitcoin are tools for the 21st century in ways that, for problems in ways that we do not know right now. And I guess just for some context to this. So, 4% of the world, like the US population, has just native access to the largest monetary tool, like the US dollar, US treasuries, like that's just what we're born into. So 96% of the world is not born into just natively like the dominant tool. Bitcoin offers all 8 billion people, the dominant tool. And so I think it's just incredibly hopeful about all the opportunity that will come when we have, like I think it's like 54% of the world, live under tyranny. When we have this tool, this system that allows people to protect their freedom, protect their sovereignty, save, think about the future in ways we've never been able to before. And so, I just think there's like, you can't even see what's coming when now people have this opportunity. Um, and then also, the adoption S curve, like we're still so early in Bitcoin. Like I think it took like 43 years for 50% of the like US to adopt electricity. And so like obviously network based technologies goods go much faster than people can ever imagine, but Bitcoin's tracking along. We're just really early, and so this is where it kind of comes in, like the network versus the asset, and they work in tandem. Like obviously they need each other, but for myself, for the world, for the future, like I don't even know. Like I don't know what the world's going to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 5 years. I just know the best way to deal with uncertainty I found for me, because I've enjoyed kind of diving into uncertainty, is what are my values, what resonates with me, and how can I put my time towards something that also has those values and kind of navigate uncertainty through that lens. And so for me, that's been Bitcoin. And so I just know, like, if I just keep acting with intention and what aligns with how can I be the best human I know how to be, everything else will kind of fall into place. Like, just keep doing my proof of work, um, and then follow the opportunities as they arise.
Ella, you got me so pumped right now. I kind of want to run through a brick wall. I love your energy.
Thank you.
I agree with you. We don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but with more Bitcoin adoption, it's going to be a bright future.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that you have a bright future ahead of you, not only with your your intellect, but your organization and your drive. It just comes right through. Um,
Thank
I appreciate you for coming on Zoom Out. I
you.
look forward to seeing what you do with your
Thank you.
skills and helping people understand the tool that we have in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to put everything that I have that you've shared in the
Thank you,
show
Ken.
notes.
Yes.
Um, Ella
No,
Hough,
but thank you. Yeah.
thank you for coming
No,
on Zoom Out.
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take care.